Greetings. The history of mankind is not just a tale of wars, rulers, and conquests. At times, the most decisive role was played by events that contemporaries called a curse, the wrath of the gods, or a sign from the heavens. Epidemics, breaking out at the most inopportune moments, altered the fates of peoples, toppled empires, and saved those who had already resigned themselves to destruction. Today, we'll recall 3 ancient epidemics described in the Bible. At first glance, they might seem like mere legends. But if we look closer, we can see how these very events shaped the future of the world and the civilization we live in today. The first of these outbreaks is the famous 10th plague of Egypt. The story is familiar to many. The Israelites languish in slavery, while Moses demands their freedom. Pharaoh refuses, and one by one, Egypt is struck by 10 disasters. The final one is the most terrible. In a single night, the firstborn of every Egyptian family perishes. From the heir to the throne, to the child of a slave, every eldest son dies. Only the homes of the Israelites, marked with the blood of a lamb, are spared. But what was this event from a medical point of view? Many modern researchers suggest it may have been a local outbreak of ergotism, poisoning, caused by ergot fungus. This parasite infects cereal crops, especially rye, and produces powerful alkaloids. Eating bread made from contaminated grain leads to convulsions, hallucinations, severe vascular spasms, and, in high doses, death. But why did only the firstborn die? The explanation was simple. In ancient households, the eldest child would sit at the table first, receiving the best and earliest portion of food. It was the firstborn who most often consumed the tainted bread or grain-based meals. The Israelites, however, were spared. They lived apart from Egypt's major cities and kept independent food supplies. Moreover, they were shepherds rather than farmers, their diet based more on meat and milk than on grain, unlike the Egyptians. This outbreak, multiplied by religious horror, ultimately led the Egyptians to release the Israelites. Had this not happened, the people of Israel might have vanished into Egypt's population, like so many conquered tribes before them. Our next story comes from the first book of Samuel, chronicling the history of the Israelites from the birth of the prophet Samuel to the death of Saul, the first king of Judah. This book recounts many conflicts between the Israelites and the Philistines, who for a time subdued nearly all the tribes of Israel. One episode tells of a failed rebellion under the high priest Eli. After one defeat, the Israelites, desperate, decided to carry the Ark of the Covenant, their holiest relic, onto the battlefield. Yet even then, the Philistines triumphed, and the gravest blow came when the sacred Ark itself fell into Philistine hands. The Bible tells us that the Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant to their city of Ashdod and placed it in the temple of their chief god, Dagon. But soon, a mysterious epidemic broke out in the city. People fell ill, developing strange tumors and sores, stricken with fever and pain. At the same time, the streets were overrun by swarms of rats. Terrified, the people of Ashdod sent the ark to the city of Gath, but the same plague struck there. From Gath it was moved to Ekron, and again the disease followed. The rulers of the 5 Philistine cities, united in a confederation, gathered and agreed. The only way to stop the plague was to return the ark to the Israelites. Together with the ark, they sent offerings of atonement, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden rats, one for each Philistine city. The ark and the gifts were placed on a cart drawn by cows, and without any guidance, The animals carried it straight to the land of the Israelites. From a medical standpoint, the description fits the bubonic plague perfectly. The sudden mass deaths, the panic, and the surge of rats were telltale signs. The priests, unable to comprehend the nature of the disease, believed the cause to be the captured sacred relic. And once again, an epidemic became a decisive factor, saving the people of Israel from military defeat. Had the Philistines kept the ark and pressed their advantage, the outcome of those wars might have been entirely different. Our next account of an epidemic is found in the second book of Kings, which chronicles the history of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah up until their conquest by the Assyrians and Babylonians. It is known that in 978 B.C., the united Hebrew kingdom split in two, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. In 722 B.C., the Assyrians conquered Israel, deporting its people to Media. This policy of forced resettlement was a standard practice for the Assyrian Empire. Constantly at war and losing population, the Assyrians repopulated their lands with conquered peoples. Deprived of their homeland, these displaced communities quickly assimilated and vanished into the empire. So it was with the people of Israel, lost forever to Judaism, and the same fate threatened the people of Judah. In 701 B.C., the Assyrian king Sennacherib, with a vast army, invaded Judah, ravaging its cities and laying siege to Jerusalem. The Judean king Hezekiah paid a staggering tribute, stripping even the temple's treasures to satisfy the Assyrians. But the Assyrian army did not withdraw. They remained, tightening the siege. Then something happened, described in the Bible as the intervention of the angel of the Lord. In a single night, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers perished. The army poised to seize the city vanished. Sennacherib was forced to lift the siege and retreat to Nineveh. What happened that night? In ancient times, such mass deaths in combat were impossible. Most likely it was a sudden, deadly outbreak of disease. Historians suggest dysentery, typhoid fever, or plague, contaminated water, spoiled food, or the appalling sanitary conditions of a vast encampment could have sparked a swift, lethal epidemic. The panicked, stricken army fled, and Jerusalem was saved. Some researchers suggest that the Assyrians may have simply been satisfied with the tribute they received and voluntarily lifted the siege. But to me, this explanation seems unlikely. At that time, Assyria was at the height of its power. It had no rivals. Even Egypt, Judah's only potential ally, had already been defeated by the Assyrians. A single glance at the map of the period reveals Judah utterly alone, surrounded on all sides by the vast expanse of Assyrian-controlled territory. The other small states, which had once survived by playing the great powers against one another, had long since been conquered. I see no reason why the Assyrians would have spared Judah. There was every incentive to annex it, and none to merely take a ransom and leave. The only thing that could have saved Judah was an extraordinary event, such as the epidemic described in the Chronicles. Of course, in 586 B.C., Judah did eventually fall, this time to the Babylonians. Its people, like the Israelites before them, were taken into exile in Babylonia. But unlike the earlier Assyrian captivity, this exile was short-lived. In 539 B.C., the Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylonia and allowed the Jews to return to their homeland. It was this return that enabled them to preserve their national and religious identity. Now imagine for a moment a different reality, one in which that plague never happened. The Assyrians would have taken Jerusalem and deported its people. The Judeans, like the Israelites, would have been scattered and assimilated, lost to history. The world would have lost the only people who carried the belief in one God. There would have been no Christianity, for Christ lived and preached within the Jewish world of Palestine, and without those foundations, Christianity could not have taken shape. Our civilization would be utterly different. For in many ways, European civilization was built upon Christianity. Even in our secular age, its spirit, its culture, its values remain deeply Christian at their core. And so I've told you of 3 ancient epidemics, 3 moments in history when death, usually seen as a curse, became salvation. These episodes remind us that history is never linear. At any moment, an invisible force, a plague, a disaster, or a simple twist of fate can alter the course of events, shaping a future felt for millennia to come. And perhaps we owe our very existence to those who long ago survived a deathly night in an enemy camp, a plague in a foreign city, and a mysterious slaughter of the firstborn. Goodbye.